Yo guys, Beast, back with some more beastly content. So this video is a continuation from last video, so we're starting at level 23 here. By the end of the video, we're going to be level 30, and we're going to show you how to get tier 4 in phase 1 of Way of Winter. Now, this will require that you played the previous season of Way of Winter, so if you're a new player, the tier you're going to be at by the end of this video is going to be tier 3 armor and guns. Your guns should always go tier 3 armor, but let's go ahead and talk about what we're talking about now. So, last video, I recommended the drop at the waterside teleport tower and build your base outside of it, because it's center of the map. There's a lot of stuff that you need to get to. There's, especially if you're a returning player, a lot of the returning, like, the storyline quests, they're just instant completes and they're good amounts of XP. So as a returning player, it's a really easy way to get yourself leveled up from 20 to 30. But if you're a new player, you won't be able to use that because you actually have to clear all the story. These little areas I'm showing you here, all these low level, level 3, level 4 areas, all of them have tons of materials, all being like tier 1 and tier 2 armor materials, so you'll be able to make yourselves tier 1 and tier 2 gear. As you can see here, I have a full tier 1 of my gear, not even calibrated yet, and then tier 2 guns. So I have like the Frost and the Burn one built right now because I wasn't sure which build I was going to go with first. I think we're going to do a Burn build on my main actually first, but we're actually going to be playing on the alt because as you can see here, I'm actually out of season transfer points, and that's actually going to be how you're able to actually get tier 4 armor in phase 1. I transferred all my deviations and such and other things that I needed on my main, and I used all my points already. So we're actually going to be doing it on the alt. Now I call it an alt, but technically it's my wife's account. She just doesn't play very much, so I end up having to do all the farming, and it just really feels like an alt to me at this point. But as you can see here, this is Whalebone, and we're going to Whalebone first. The reason why we're going to Whalebone is actually to get salt. If you dropped on the beginner side of the map, you should actually be closer to oceans there. We actually went to Whalebone, and we did all this swimming and everything, but I just realized that it was like a public event surge of fish that was right at the ocean currently going on. So we actually went to like that teleporter I marked on the map, then we swam all the way out here to this island, and finally we were able to find some water that was seawater. So right off the bat, as soon as you can, you're going to want to get yourself some seawater gathered up. You don't need but like 100 of it, but you need to get some gathered up. And the reason why you need to get seawater gathered up is actually for salt. And the reason why you're actually going to want salt is because it's going to give you a food item that's going to give you 10 resist to the cold. That's stacked up with some helium, and you should be able to survive any cold anywhere in the world without even having to worry about having armor on. At that point, you just need salty spiked tomatoes and some helium, and you can go out and get yourself some tier 1 and tier 2 gear, and it won't be freezing to death while doing so. You can technically also be walking around with a torch and have your heat increased even more. But yeah, as you can see here, just some water and some logs, and we were able to make a whole 100 salt there, a little over 100, and then some salty spiked tomatoes. So now we have a salty spiked tomato on us, and we have ourselves some helium. And having that, we also have our tier 1 gear farmed up from those low level locations I was showing you. All those settlement locations will have materials, so just go to those. The next place we're actually going to be headed for is going to be Wishland. Now, on our way to Wishland, we're actually going to unlock the first teleport tower that's like the starting point for your Wishland farms from now on, because you can farm Wishland every 4 hours. I suggest for you to do so daily because it drops a ton of materials that you're really need. But on your way to Wishland, you should run into this teleport tower here. Unlock it. To the left of it, there's a field. It's full of spiked tomatoes, so you're going to be able to load up on salty spiked tomatoes. You get yourself a fridge Memetic unlocked in your base. We're not covering that today. And you're going to be able to store all that salty spiked tomatoes. Super duper easy, no problem. But we finally made it to Wishland, and the reason why I recommend Wishland is loot every single trash can here, guys, because the trash cans are full of loot. And I'm actually just going to show you my farm run. I actually do both sides of Wishland because both sides are very, very much worth doing here. I actually do this side first, and we're just going to take the right corridor here and just run through and collect all the trash cans. Eventually, you're going to find yourselves upon a claw machine boss back here, and depending on your level, might be a little bit difficult. I think we had a tier 1 assault rifle here, but we did finally clear him, and on to the rest of the farm. Now, it's worth killing the claw machine. You could technically try and just run past him, but then he might kill you anyway, so might as well fight him, take him out of the way, and keep on going. As I said though, Wishland is great. Up here there's a ton of trash cans here. There's also going to be a ton of trash cans in the other side of Wishland. There's just a ton of stuff in all of Wishland. Definitely a must farm, and we're going to activate the first rift anchor here. This one is actually going to be dropping the tier 4 materials like main item indium or iridium or something like that crystals. Those are going to be needed to make our tier 4 gear. We will have to transfer some stuff from the season backpack. Vandanium crystals are actually the ones you're going to be needing to get if you are trying to make tier 3 gear and you're not going to be transferring from the previous season materials. So as you can see here, we are just, running through the other side now. This is the other side. The rift anchor on this side actually has Vandanium crystals. Now, there are other places to farm Vandanium crystals we are going to get on into in a bit, but as you can see here, this side is just as good. A whole bunch of trash cans here. There's another spot in Wishland that has a whole bunch of trash cans. As we did die here, but we're going to continue on here, and then I think we ended up dying again, so that was actually ended this side of Wishland early, which means we actually didn't get any Vandanium crystals from this because we didn't go do the Rift Anchor. But when you are doing it, I do suggest do both sides of Wishland, activate both Rift Anchors for the first time, and now we're back at base. We're actually going to be building the intermediate gear workbench. Here's the other thing. I'm not actually sure you can get all the materials needed to even make the workbench without, transferring from the previous season. But we did get ourselves an intermediate workbench made. We needed Vandanium crystals, which can be collected from different Rift Anchors. There's the Iridium crystals, which are for the tier 4 gear. As you can see, those are available from different Rift Anchors. We went to all those, collected all of those on both my main account and my alt account, so I had as many of those as possible so that I could make myself a full set of tier 4 gear on the alt. And then all the Vandanium crystals farming, we're also going to just go do on the alt first and get a full tier 3 gear set worth of materials in my chest so that I can make on my main a full set of tier 3 gear. So if you're transferring from the previous season, you can get yourself tier 4 gear really easy, but you're going to need about 5,000 season transfer points. Depending on what materials you go out and farm. You can farm the main material. The main crystal can be farmed in this season, the Iridium crystals from the Rift Anchors. The only thing you're actually going to have to transfer over is the adhesive can be farmed. The engineering plastic will have to be transferred, and the metallic fibers will actually have to be transferred. Also, if you're going to be making a tier 4 gun, which I highly don't recommend doing, you're going to need some aluminum. I also think like the chest piece needed a couple pieces of aluminum, so you'll have to transfer the aluminum over. As for the gun, I highly recommend you just make a tier 3 for this time, because in order to make the tier 4 actually worth using, you're going to need to calibrate it up, which is going to require, you guessed it, aluminum, and you're not actually able to make aluminum until phase 2. So I recommend making a tier 3 gun, getting it at max calibration, and if you're able to transfer over, you can transfer over a tier 4 material set. It will make your phase 1 farming a lot easier, as there are a good amount of days in phase 1. It might be worth it if you do have the extra season transfer points, especially if you have an alt, because your alt probably didn't need all of its transfer points. You kind of got double what some people got. But as you can see here, the next thing we're actually just going to go ahead and do here is just show you where all you can go farm the Vandanium crystals. Now, we started in Vinja Ford. And in Vinja Ford, there are some Rift Anchors that do have the tier 4 crystals that you do need. This is actually where you can get the tier 4 crystals at. But for Vandanium crystals, you actually need to head to the side of the map where Ice House Camp is. And all of the Rift Anchors over there will either be dropping, this is the Wishland section. As you can see, one side drops the tier 4 materials, or the tier 4 main material, none of the rest. And then one side drops Vandanium crystals, which is for your tier 3 gear and your tier 3 guns. So if you're not transferring over the materials for tier 4 gear, you're going to have to get your tier 3 gear made up. And then one of the key things to doing that is going to be farming the Vandanium crystals, which can be farmed from the side of the map that is Ice House. All the Rift Anchors over there will be dropping Vandanium crystals. You'll be able to get enough to get a full tier 3 setup, super duper easy. Even your gun should be able to be made. As you can see though, we are on the alt now and we got its tier 4 set made, but we need to actually get the account to level 30. That's the other thing to note upon. The other reason why most people say just make a tier 3 set is because in order to use a tier 4 set, you need to get your character up to level 30 within phase 1. The tier 3 set will only require level 20. The tier 4 set requires level 30. So you're going to have to get your character leveled up to level 30 before it can even use the tier 4 that you're going to be making. Now, as you can see there, we were low on materials and weren't actually able to transfer enough over to make the tier 4 gun, but I didn't want to do that anyway because I also would have had to transfer over a ton of aluminum ingots in order to actually get its calibration up to 10. Meanwhile, I can currently farm steel plates in Phase 1 of Way of Winter and easily get my Tier 3 gun calibrated up to calibration 10. You understand why you don't want to make the Tier 4 gun, even if you have the season transfer points. But now we're on to the final point of the video, how I got to level 30. So pretty much, I'd say this is like literally any level, honestly, but optimal would probably be about level 25 plus. Just outside of the Chaos Weaver areas, I've seen it going on in the world chat on my server. They kept announcing it. It's actually in the Vinja Fjord areas where we're currently at. But if you just go to where the Chaos Weavers are and hang out there with a bunch of players, or even just yourself, a bunch of these enemies will spawn. And as long as you deal damage to them when they are defeated, you'll be collecting the XP rewards. Now, that doesn't sound like too big of a deal until you realize some of these enemies drop 300 XP per enemy, and you can get up to like 20 enemies in the area at one time. So like 20 times 300, even though it's probably more like 15 times 305 that are, you know, 130 XP. Regardless, it's a ton of XP, super duper easy, and if there's a whole server of people on anyway, all you got to do is get a couple bullets in, and you're just going to be climbing the levels left and right. Now, another thing to mention on is sometimes when you kill all the enemies too quickly, it'll take like a minute or two for the enemies to start spawning back in. It kind of feels like it's a wave-based thing. It's not an infinite spawn, but it is infinite. You'll just have to wait for them to spawn from time to time. Just stand around and wait until enemies start spawning again. They did seem to actually be fighting the Chaos Weaver, though I do not really recommend trying to fight the Chaos Weaver in Phase 1, just because as you can see here, they've been here for like 2 or 3 hours farming the enemies here. I think you just shoot at the Chaos Weaver to get more enemies to farm faster. And as you can see here, more enemies coming out of the ground now. Super duper great though, guys. It is pretty quick. It is definitely the easiest way to get to level 30, and it's how I got my alt to level 30 so that I'll be able to use it with the tier 4 gear that I was able to make to actually go farm up the tier 3 materials to make my tier 4 gear. As for you, you just got to get your Vandanium crystals farmed up. If you were doing the Wishland runs, after all that, you might have to make a tier 2 set and then go farm the like Frost Forge area. But aside from that, I think I've covered about everything you need to know in order to get OP and get your armor and guns all the way up in Phase 1 of Way of Winter. So I am out. See yas. Keep it beast mode.